You ever realize how many games just get forgotten? It happens all the time, even with titles that find success. In AAA spaces, it's obvious why it happens. Usually what gets forgotten are samey sequels, spin-offs, or rarely really good stuff that the publishers just let die off. But as you get further down, it happens more and more often, and less of it is from lack of care. Seriously, think of how much people bring up forgotten gems in terms of B studios or indies. There's so many games that grab people's attention, mostly on YouTube, for a small while and then they just fade off, only brought up sparingly again, if at all past the initial video. Sometimes it's just inevitable. All art is forgotten by most after its time, unless you're one of the classics. But occasionally you get groundbreaking pieces of media that do something so perfectly, and yet they still fall to this fate rather than being remembered. Plenty of my old favorites have fallen to this fate. The things I either played or watched with joy, like Besiege, Little Inferno, Fran Bow, and others now only come back to me when I dig for them. But occasionally, I pull up one of these old things and remember why I loved it so dearly, and what it did to gain such attention from me in the first place. And sometimes I find more than I bargained for, and I find something that I don't know why it got forgotten in the first place. And today, we'll be covering one of those forgotten masterpieces. Hapu Games' Deadbolt. Deadbolt is a 2D stealth shooter made by Hapu Games. You may know them from their recent success with Risk of Rain 2 that really put them on the map. But before that, they were rather small. The studio started as just two college students, Duncan Drummond and Paul Morse, who wanted to develop something that combined their favorite genres of platformers and roguelikes, but also with difficulty that added a unique sense of urgency. The result of this long endeavor that was forced to move to Kickstarter at one point was Risk of Rain, the 2D predecessor to the massive roguelike we have today. The game found decent success for an indie tale, selling well, finding favorable reviews, and earning an award. But before following up on the success like most would, Hapu Games decided to take a detour to explore another idea for a game, an idea that would eventually turn into Deadbolt. Deadbolt is a game that follows you, the new Grim Reaper, as your employer tells you there's unrest amongst the underworld. You have to bust the violent crime groups of zombies, vampires, and demons in order to get to the bottom of a grand conspiracy, doing your job as a Reaper along the way. The game was released to Steam and PC in 2016, and found moderate success with very good reviews, word of mouth, and even a few YouTubers playing it. And then it just dropped off the map. No one talked about it after that point, YouTubers didn't finish it, and it took even me a while to actually get to playing it. But when I did, my goodness was I blown away with what I played, because this game is absolutely fantastic in so many ways. So today, we're going to break down why this is such a hidden gem. Minor spoilers for gameplay and story, but I won't be spoiling the twists of the plot or the endings of the game. They are well worth experiencing on your own. So, without further ado, let's dive in. There's a handful of games that Deadbolt gets compared to when people try to describe it gameplay-wise. Hotline Miami, Katana Zero, or My Friend Pedro to name a few. And I can't blame people for seeing the similarities, as it does have a lot of shared elements with a mission structure, a gameplay focusing on clearing out rooms of enemies with only one hit killing you, and some decent gore and violence thrown in. But while it may appear to fit in with these games on the surface, Deadbolt does not at all feel like these games, switching out the fast-paced, adrenaline-filled killing with the stealth and puzzle solving of a professional assassin. While other games of this structure focus more on the action and twitch-based reflexes, Deadbolt takes a slower and more methodical approach. You can't just run in guns blazing and take everyone out. The enemies will take way more hits than you ever could and strike back with extreme force if they catch you out in the open. You're not a one-man army. You're a professional. Deadbolt isn't an action game despite the similar structure. At its heart, it's a pure stealth game and a fine one at that. Levels are unique puzzles about needing to always stay in the shadows and pick off the undead one by one, deciding which weapons can be spent where and which enemies need to be taken out first, and what vantage points you can take. And the game has so many mechanics that all make for this perfect game of cat and mouse. So let's discuss each of them. The main thing that makes Deadbolt work so well as a stealth game is how much you can plan ahead and devise a strategy. This is mostly helped by the perspective the game takes, but also by how much control you have over the level. Even without unique mechanics that some levels sport, you have lights that can be turned on and off, or shut off for good with a bullet if you can't risk the switch being flipped again. You have a system of sound detection with both distracting devices and also your own firearms. And of course the most recognizable feature, doors to knock at. A silly thing at first, but also a powerful tool to lure enemies into an ambush. Each of these basic systems interconnects and already allows for complex plans of baiting, hiding, and taking out just the basic thugs. But of course, the game isn't content with just this much to build its puzzles. No. Because the game goes further with offering so many different ways to tackle these stages in the form of weapons. Whether you bring them along or find them on corpses, Deadbolt has a wide arsenal to make use of. Whether you want to lure zombies into the dark before giving them 50 stab wounds, snipe them silently from the doorways before they know what happened, or try to go in guns blazing with shotguns and sledgehammers, Deadbolt allows you to express how you want to play. But it doesn't leave it there, as weapons are also a vital part of the puzzle in each level. While you may be able to choose your starting strategy, you'll soon have to work with dwindling ammo and have to make do with what the enemies drop, rationing out how many bullets you can spend, going for dangerous melee kills to save ammo for a tough bouncer, and making other tough decisions to try to scrape through the level. It adds an excellent layer of strategy to these stages. But as per usual, the game isn't content with just this much, as we get to the incredible enemies the game sports. Deadbolt has a surprisingly large roster of enemies for the size of the game, each level usually sporting at least one new variant to deal with. And thankfully, most of them get very creative with their differences, rather than just going with tougher reskins with better weapons. You'll be dealing with bouncers that you'll have to save up powerful weapons or lots of ammo to take down, vampires whose soul vessels you need to find to truly kill, and skeletons either hiding from you underground ready to open fire, or ready to lay mines that can either be your doom or your boon. Each enemy acts as a unique puzzle piece for the level, possibly being either an obstacle or a pawn to use against the others. They add so much to the levels of this game. And just as the cherry on top, each level sports some unique mechanic to either introduce or make its own, whether it be a new enemy like with the Hellhound Kennels, or a fascinating new obstacle such as Timur's traps. It makes each level feel like an exciting new level to take on, and not just another warehouse to kill waves of enemies in like some games can end up being. It really helps the game's overall pace and keeps the player on the edge of their seat, especially with the unique boss enemies, who are delights to take on, especially the final boss that I dare not spoil. All of this adds up for an incredibly satisfying experience that's hard to put into words. The feeling of finally getting a perfect plan to take on a level and blazing through it with the precision of a professional reaper is the best thing in the world. It's absolutely top of its field in terms of stealth games, with the sheer depth on display. But enough about the gameplay. Let's dive into another aspect that Hapu excels at: spectacle, and visuals. Deadbolt is a fantastic looking game. The game's art style falls in the footsteps of Hapu's previous game, Risk of Rain, though now tweaked and improved upon. Deadbolt keeps the choice of small player and enemy sprites with much more detailed environments around them, but it's clear the team really improved in their craft between the two games, as Deadbolt boasts far more detail in both regards while maintaining the simplicity. Hapu is incredibly talented at using very few pixels to get across their ideas, allowing them to look beautiful without being cramped or too large and over-detailed. This small and simplistic looks pays off in the same way as Risk of Rain, where everything in the world manages to blend together so perfectly. Everything just has this sense of flow that I can't put into words the best, but just look at all of this. And the environments help to build a lot of this feeling as well, as detail is expertly placed to where these spaces still feel lived in, but none of that detail is in a place where it can be distracting or take away from the game feel. This keeps the experience clutter-free while leaving a very pretty and pleasing environment for when you stroll back through the level. And thanks to the small sprite size, they can easily pull off dynamic effects on the environment, such as blood spraying out from your kills or bullet holes being left behind from your firefights, dynamically leaving marks on the level as you carve your unique path. And once again, it all meshes together perfectly and looks gorgeous in motion. And speaking of gorgeous, while most of the game is kept to where the gameplay is able to shine more than visuals, when Hapu gets a place they can go hard with their sprites, they go extra hard. The unique set pieces or decorations for some levels are absolutely beautiful with how they're put together and really bring the levels together. Seriously, I just love this visual style so much. And that's not even mentioning all the creative designs we have going on here. From the general scummy look and feel of the place we inhabit, to the fun designs of the zombies, the more unique take on types of vampires, and the aesthetic for the dredge, which I absolutely adore in every single way. And the candles are just the absolute best. I love these guys, they are such a cool idea, and they are perfect in every single way. But as is standard for Hapu games, the standout aspect isn't the visuals, but rather the music wonderfully composed by Chris Christodoulou, that absolutely sells every single aspect of the game. Chris's music is known for two things: strange titles that make no sense, and going way harder with his composition than you would ever need for a video game. And he brings both to the table for Deadbolt. Each track here is expertly composed with fantastic solos, interesting melodies, and rather than just being regular looping tracks, Chris throws in some of the best music progression and building I've ever heard, as each song slowly adds more and more layers till it reaches an explosive finale that never ceases to amaze. And each track is incredibly unique, each usually taking one idea to call its own and build the track around, whether it's an instrument, a unique gimmick, or just a way to progress the music. You never know what you'll get with Chris's songs, but each of them is absolutely incredible and are a joy to listen to outside of the game, especially with tracks like Blood on the Dance Floor and Ashes to Ashes to Ashes. But when listened to in terms of the game, these tracks are masterpieces where they capture the tone they need. The game makes excellent use of certain instruments and sounds to represent each part of Deadbolt's world in a way that I love, such as giving zombies mostly hip-hop, vampires getting their nightclub raves, and the dredge and our own Reaper getting jazz and guitars. But beyond the funny ways it ties itself into the world, the tracks also fit their tones perfectly, whether it be the relaxing nature of I Am Become Death, which sells the entire concept of who the Reaper is, the high-octane rush of trying to stop a harvest while the Great Beyond plays, and don't even get me started on how perfectly Ashes to Ashes to Ashes sells the finale of Deadbolt and tells the story of Ibzan, because it gives me goosebumps every time. Chris has done more than simply make an OST that sets the mood of certain scenes. He's made one that has so much emotion that it tells the story just through the music alone. Seriously, even if the game doesn't interest you, at least check out this score, because I mean it when I say it's easily one of the best OSTs I've ever listened to. But enough about the music and visuals. Let's finally dive into what they're used to tell: the story and atmosphere of Deadbolt. Deadbolt builds up an utterly fascinating world with how it handles the afterlife, a spin on the idea I really haven't seen elsewhere. Where most other pieces of media make their afterlives a mix of somewhere horrifying and somewhere peaceful, or they just go full esoteric with how they handle the concept of death, Deadbolt makes its afterlife surprisingly mundane with the place. Rather than eternal punishment or eternal bliss, if you die a certain way in Deadbolt's world, you forever inhabit an empty ghost town, bland apartments and nightclubs, and a banal existence. It's an afterlife not made to be horrifying, just sad, empty. Nothing awaits you here. You're just left to wander without a single purpose, forever feeling empty and cold. The gangs and undead you encounter throughout the game reflect this world, and when they aren't wrapped up in the grand conspiracy, they're just desperate to feel anything, drinking and dancing away their feelings with the vampires, or losing themselves to the drug of ash, drowning away their feelings, joining these gangs in to find some purpose in the afterlife. The tapes add more layers to this, showing the true state of everyone you deal with, how they all wish they could finally die or just feel something again, how desperate everyone is to get away from this meaningless existence, the pure pain of existing in this place. It builds an absolutely crushing atmosphere to the place, one that allows the main story to shine beautifully. The story is kept on the down low until the final few levels, mostly just allowing the gameplay to shine and for you to have fun, but the small pieces you do get are expertly communicated through the levels themselves, especially with the 1000-Year Royals missions, for example. Trying to piece together the grand conspiracy of what's going on is excellent, and comes together for a story that builds on these themes perfectly. As within the place, there is only one hope for freedom: you. You as a Reaper grant these undead their rest and relief from their pain by returning their soul to the flames, allowing their soul to be reborn back into the world, in a better place. So, why are these souls resisting then? What is their grand plan? Eventually, you manage to piece together through the ash and collection of bodies that all of these gangs are being led by someone to return to the mortal world, to escape and finally feel something again. Yet, this is something you can't allow to happen, no matter how sympathetic their aims are, and no matter how much you may feel sorry for their leader. But we'll get to him later. The story ends up being expertly paced while never getting in the way of having fun levels. It always opens up opportunities for something new while also progressing the themes perfectly each time. Each twist is turned into a gameplay moment. Each new character is an interesting mechanic. It's really incredible how they managed to pull it off. Also surprising is that despite characters either having none or only a few lines of dialogue, the game manages to build some really memorable characters you go up against. Deadbolt takes advantage of everything it can, from their design, to their levels, to their mechanics, the little you hear of them beforehand, and everything else to cement a strong personality for them, even if you never hear them speak once. Characters like Timur, Madame Stella, and especially Ibzan are so dang charming for how little they get. And speaking of Ibzan, let's delve into that finale for a moment, because my goodness, is it one of the best I've seen in a game, with how well it ties together all the themes, and in terms of pure spectacle. I do think it is worth to see this ending for yourself, so please skip to this timestamp if you don't want to be spoiled on all of this. It's a really incredible game, and I think you should play it, so go ahead and come back here when you're done. But in the ending of the game, you eventually piece together the one behind the conspiracy is Ibzan, leader of the Dredged and a former Reaper. You move in to stop his portal to the mortal world, taking out everyone with a massive arsenal provided by the flames. But in the end, Ibzan moves forward with his plan and enters the mortal world. And thus, you're back home. Home sweet home. Here you finally face off against Ibzan in a duel, constantly planning and ambushing them with nothing but your trusty revolvers and scythe. Yet, he doesn't seem to want to even fight you, as he searches around the house, trying to find something or someone. He's not here for a grand plan. He's looking for someone who you managed to find first. The Flames. The one you've spoken to throughout the entire game, here in their true form. Through bits of dialogue in his tape, you can piece together Ibzan's status as a former Reaper, and that he lost his place for something he did. And now he's come to the Flames realm to speak to them, to find that connection again. Yet, you find them before they can. And the Flames don't want to accept Ibzan and order you to face off against them, despite how much Ibzan needs them, wants to be close to them again. They're put down by your character. A tragic end as Ibzan gives everything he can, hurling insults towards you, the new object of the Flames' love that he never got, and using the full force of the Dredged against you, all to be put down outside the house, desperately trying to fire at you with an empty revolver. It's hard to put into words how much emotion this finale conveys, even without the extra lore. The sheer feeling of finally speaking to the Flames and facing down Ibzan again and again and again until you finally beat him is just a magical way to end this game, bringing together every theme in the game for a massive payoff. Rest in peace, Ibzan. You found your way to your friend, just not in the way you wished to. But let's finally wrap all this up. Deadbolt is a game that doesn't deserve to be left behind like this. It's an absolute masterclass in its genre, and does some stuff better than any game to come after it. While they're both great games, I can't help but feel a little disappointed that games like Katana Zero or My Friend Pedro got so much attention and hype, yet Deadbolt just didn't. Hopefully it can get a slice of that fame now, even after its initial lifespan. Deadbolt was clearly more of a fun side project for Happu Games, as after its release, they shifted focus to Risk of Rain 2, a 3D sequel to their first game, and seeing the success the game has found on release, well, they made the right call not focusing too much on Deadbolt, and I am so happy an indie studio like them has found this much success. I do hope they return to the world of Deadbolt someday, because it feels like there's so much more that can be done. But I wouldn't blame them if they don't. Success is hard to come by with indies, and it looks like they have a chance to be remembered forever now. I can't blame any studio for taking the opportunity. But that's all for now. See you all in the next video, wherever that takes us.